Do not use all capitals in a sentence longer than 3 words. Why?
It's like yelling.
You know, it's harder to read. You know, if you write like 6 to 10 words in capitals, I mean, you'll see that, but in general, you don't want to do that. So be careful with the caps. This is a true story, I was teaching a class in Alaska, and they had to do a term paper. So this one guy who was actually from Taiwan, he was the police chief, and he gave me a 71-page paper, all capitals, because he was Taiwanese, and he didn't know grammar, so I figured I'll type the whole thing in caps, and I won't be able to figure out what he did wrong. But in general, you don't do that. 1 space after a period, comma, or other punctuation marks, not 2. Why?
Harder to read?
Sorry?
Didn't you tell me it was harder to read?
Not necessarily, not for that. Sorry?
Books are written, right? 1 space?
Yeah, and why are books written that way?
Is there paper?
Well, not exactly, but what happens is, true story, in the old days, when they first developed the typewriter, well, actually, in the Middle Ages, there were no spaces. They just wrote without stopping and periods and so on. But when they invented the typewriter, what they did was they couldn't have proportional spacing because an I is thin, W is big. So at the end of a word, if you put a period down under like an I and a W started the next sentence, they'd be right together because there was no proportional spacing. So the convention came up as 2 spaces after a period because of that. That's the only reason. Then, when they started typesetting with type, printing, they didn't have to only space, so you didn't need to have an extra space after a period. When I learned to typeset, we used to get manuscripts written with 2 spaces, and then we would translate that into 1 space when we printed, like in a newspaper. When we started using word processors, you no longer needed to use typewriter conventions. No longer, because they had proportional spacing in here. And students in high school now are learning to just use 1 space after a period, whereas people like me and probably you learn to use 2. But the correct way with computers and technology is just 1 space after a period. So please, and any kind of punctuation mark. And I do take points off for that kind of thing. But I'm telling you now, but not in this class. In other classes. This class I let you go.
No, you didn't. Oh no.
I lost
Yeah.
the point.
I lost points too.
And
Can
now
I go
there's
back?
1 space after the period. I lost 2 points because you said that you needed 2 spaces
2 spaces. After what?
after a period.
1 space.
No, you wrote down you need 2 spaces.
I made a mistake. It's 1 space. Did you have 2 spaces after or 1 space?
1, and then you say you
And I said 2? You sure? Then that's my. I'll change that then. Okay. Also, never underline text unless it's a hyperlink. Why? Why not?
people think it's a hyperlink.
Because they think it's a hyperlink. Because it's universal now. Underlining means hyperlinking. The only reason why you had underlining was because typewriters couldn't do italics. So instead of, like for a title of a book, they used to have italics. If you look, it's printed, it's in italics. It's never underlined. The reason why they underlined was because you couldn't use italics on a typewriter. They don't have them built in, right? So they got into this habit of underlining. But we don't use typewriters anymore. Yeah.
Along the same lines, a hyperlink should always be underlined, right? Because sometimes I go to a website and there's a phrase that is a link and it's not underlined, so I don't know as far as.
Well, because you can do that with the with CSS and other programs. So people think it's cool to do that, but probably not, because people expect an underline for the link. So I would, some people do that. Like a picture could be linked and it won't be underlined, but you'll know to click on it. So don't underline. Red is the key color, so only use red for highlighting, like as you're doing things, make sure that you don't overuse red. Are you okay? You're having a... You look like, yeah, you look like
I'm
you're
sick
sick.
again.
Do you need any medicine or something?
No.
Is air conditioning bothering you
No.
or helping? Okay.
Trying
This
to
is-
be there.
So red is something only to be used in general for pointing, directing somebody's eye at something. So what it does is it separates stuff. For example, you have here all these words in black. And if I want to put September 17th, I highlight it with red, your eye goes right to it. If I use black, it blends in a bit with the black. And so, you know, sometimes you're not sure if that's just a mark. But red is a purposeful mark. Stop signs are red because they're the easiest to see from the longest distance. So red is just something to use as a designer or a teacher to let people know that, to look here, right away, stop, look here. So that's vital. Multicolor text, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. So don't do it because you just want to get a message across. You don't want to show people that you can use red, blue, and green in the same sentence. This is all posted on the class site too, so, and I'll emphasize this again in all the classes. And usually it's in the syllabus. Okay, bold and italics for highlighting important information. First of all, never use bold and italics together on the same word. Never. It's like hitting something with two hammers at the same time. Because they both are for emphasis only. If you have categories like a graph, you'd use the categories in black and the rest would be in regular colors because you want the categories to stand out and then you want to be able to read the information in there. It's like in this class, if everybody came in here and last night you were at home and you dyed your hair pink, and everybody came in here with pink hair, which I'm not trying to picture, but if you all came in with pink hair, then nobody would stand out because everybody would have pink hair, right? There you go, you too. So bold is basically to make something stand out. Italics may be for quotations.
No, I'm laughing because my hair was pink for Thanksgiving.
It was?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
You have a picture? Post it on your website.
I'll try and find
Okay.
one.
So that's another one. Be careful of. Apostrophes, I see this all the time. People make mistakes with apostrophes. It's not a big thing, but if you're teachers, even if you're training adults, they'll notice if you make a mistake with apostrophes. An apostrophe means a possessive or it's a contraction, but it's not like the 1950s or horses. A lot of people would like the horses' saddles. They would, well, that's a possessive. But say the horses walk or the horses run, they would use an apostrophe for the horses when it doesn't belong there. Or if they use like in the 1980s. And you'll see that. Most people, you won't see that printed unless it's a newspaper and somebody wrote it incorrectly. So there are lots of situations when you use apostrophes, but be careful. And left align for your text. Why do I say that?
Easier to read.
That's how we read.
Sorry?
That's how we read.
It's how we read. And it's, I think I told you this, and if I did, remind me. But did I give you the analogy of the cake?
No.
Well, when you eat a piece of cake, do you taste the salt?
No.
Sugar? It's sweet, but you don't taste sugar. Do you taste the baking powder? No. It's a piece of cake. You don't think about what went into it. Communication's the same way. When you want to communicate a message, you don't want people thinking, what's that picture up there? What's that? You don't want them to think, why is it centered? Is it a poem or something? Or why is it this way and that? So you don't want people to think about what's up there. except for the message. You don't have to think about why is that one text different than the other? Why is the title so much larger than the other titles on the other pages? So that's why you always want to be consistent and not put anything in the way of good communication. So that's why I give you feedback on that, on presentations and stuff. People are not consistent, and you should be. Left aligning is definitely a consistency thing. And be consistent with your fonts, sizes, and placements. So when you make a presentation and you have a title, all the titles should be the same size, same font. When you have text, you want them to be the same size as well, same font, and you want them to be in the same spot. So you don't want to put like one at the bottom, one at the top. Try and have everything as similar as possible. It's like reading a book. So you just go from page to page, and you don't have to stop and look at pictures or figure out why something is on there. So in general, just be consistent with how you do it. And definitely don't use decorative graphics. Don't put a pretty picture up there because you have nothing to do. Just put graphics that relate to what you're talking about, or don't use a graphic at all. Only if it adds to the message. If it doesn't add, then you don't need it. You just cause more trouble than if you use it. A question or comments about any of these? I got to have at least two.
Question about the decorative.
Sure.
Graphics. And I guess maybe decorative because that's different. Like if I'm teaching to first graders, 5 and 6 years old, and all they're seeing up there is text, that you lose them. So using an image to reinforce the text is perfectly.
That's not decoration.
Okay.
And plus,
so
you wouldn't put
saying like squirrely scrolls or
squirrely scrolls, or else like a pretty flower here because it looks bare. Nothing to do with it. Now, first grade, I would say you probably wouldn't have a lot of text up there for them anyway.
Right.
And you might have like a word or two, or a graphic icon would be even better in some ways. Depends on the audience. One more question or comment? Yeah.
For
Which number?
number 8, left align. How do I left align text box in the notebook program? Because it won't. There's not like in Word you can left center.
Okay. So the question is, here's Notebook.
You can do that.
Okay, I'm going to show them. I mean, you can do it.
I just don't know how.
Can I show you?
Yes, please.
Now, there are some programs that won't let you left align, some of the Web 2.0 programs, but you live with that. Inspiration doesn't let you left align if you use Inspiration. But, okay, so say you open up. And this is an easy one. It's, yeah.
That's just that other program.
Now, if it was something hard, I probably couldn't demonstrate it to you. I can't see the screen. Okay, so when you have like a bunch of text,
Yeah, that I can't figure out.
it's all in the same thing. And if you want to make it bigger, drag that out. And if you want to make it centered, that centers it. That left right aligns it, and that left aligns it.
No, but that's aligning the text within the box.
Yeah.
I want the whole box aligned.
Oh, the whole box aligned with something else?
Yes.
If you have
Multiple
a bunch
boxes.
of boxes, you can't do it.
Right.
Well, you don't have the align on some of these programs. There's like an align that you can align the boxes.
Mine has format and line, and you can.
Sorry?
In format, there's a line, and you can like they like to lock in place a little bit.
Where?
Format
Format
at the
is.
top.
I'm sorry.
The top. There's options, format, and align. Alignment. This
Oh, you
is
mean
like-
this?
Yeah.
Aligning? You mean it lets you
want the
align?
boxes to be able to line up.
Show the guides. Do the guides. Snap the
But it
object the
It doesn't
guides.
align, like PowerPoint, you select them all, you
Yeah.
align left and they all.
Oh, okay.
No, but you
You know,
can,
this
but they
one-
sort of
okay.
like lock in place.
But
and
you
there's a
know,
line that you
yeah,
can see.
and you know that the green there is the thing, the center. And also, use the arrow keys. Arrow keys go like one tiny bit, like a pixel or two. So anytime you have something selected, if you use the arrow key up or down, it'll move it exactly where you want it to be. You've probably tried to move things with the mouse to try and get it centered. But like this, you can use it, and then say this one here, I can just move it here. Well, I got them both selected, so let me undo that. Then I can click on this one, drag it close.
I'd like to have a guess. If I was to left align with 2 text boxes.
I'm sorry?
I was to move the boxes to the left and guess.
Oh, left align? Well, just you can draw a line. I mean, you can just even draw a line right down and use that as a guide.
Okay.
That's what I do. I mean, it's not. This is not PowerPoint,
Right.
and it's not intended for total. It's intended for like working presentations, like when Maria shows stuff on the board, you bring it up here. It's not like PowerPoint to read. It's interactive, where things happen and take place. But this is how you would do it. I mean, just simple. Any other questions that folks have about that? So I just expect you to follow those.
Thank you.
And I'll talk about them again in all the classes. And they're not big things, but they're things to consider as professionals.